All right, we are live. Everything went well.
Fantastic.
Hello, Lee. So happy you can be with me here today. We,
Okay, yeah, it's
uh,
my pleasure.
yeah, we're so looking forward to you being at the Feed Real Summit in just about a month,
Yeah,
October
it's really
11th and
close.
12th. Yeah, we're very, very excited for your talk. For those of you that don't know Lee, I don't know where you've been, but I'm going to introduce him. Lee Carroll is out of Australia, Queensland, he said. And he's a medical herbalist, educator, mentor with more than 30 years in the herbal industry. He's worked 23 years teaching healthcare professionals, 11 years in private practice, and he combines Western herbal practices with modern biomedical science to deliver effective, personalized solutions that have helped thousands to improve their health. So welcome, everyone. I want Lee to give himself a little more introduction. You can talk about the fact that you're a member of the Natural Path and Herbist Association, whatever you want to add to that. And then we'll get on with our Q&A basically throughout the next hour.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Kay. And welcome, everyone. It's great to have you all here.
Yeah.
So perhaps just to add to what Kay said, I come from a long tradition of Western herbalists that had their origin all the way back in New Hampshire, back in the mid to late 1800s via Samuel Thompson. So, my teacher had a teacher in the UK. That teacher in the UK learned from herbalists that had that long association. There's a few gaps in this chain, but it's a very long and kind of illustrious tradition. So I feel the weight of that when I'm educating, when I'm in practice. So it's not about, me making stuff up to get a sale for someone. It's about honoring the tradition. It's about understanding the modern challenges that we face as humans and animals, and how can we reimagine and re-look at the plant medicines that we use, the fungal medicines that we use, and how they fit into a more modern paradigm, because many of the things that we face today weren't challenges, 100, 200, 2,000, 4,000 years ago when these medicines were being used. So I think mushrooms have got, a lot to offer. For me, they're quite a relatively new kind of addition to my repertoire. I got interested in mushrooms in 2019. And I started a really deep dive from 2020. So in 5 years, I've gone from pretty much zero, to being, an expert. And when I did my education, I graduated in 2013. I didn't learn anything about mushrooms, but I had already been in the herbal medicine industry. My first job was a production manager at a big herbal medicine company that was focused on practitioners only. So in that 30 years of working in the herbal industry, there was, very kind of poor recognition of mushrooms. They were just pigeonholed as cancer kind of supportive products, and there were specialized extracts that you must use that come from China or Japan. So I didn't really interact with them there. So here I am today, very integrated into both the herbal and the fungal realm. And I think mushrooms have got a huge amount to offer dogs. And I've been on a really deep dive there in the last 12 months, really. And it's pretty exciting. Yeah. And clearly I'm not a veterinarian, but just my own experience with what I've been doing and what I've been suggesting, I've seen, incredible things happen in short periods of time.
That's awesome. I have really gotten to where I've been doing a lot of reading on mushrooms and stuff too over the last couple of years, mainly meeting people through Real Mushrooms and some of the other companies that we are partnering with at the Feed Real Institute. So it's really exciting topic for me, for both me and my dog, the benefits that we get from them. So yeah. So I have a long list of questions that we can discuss and then take it anywhere it goes. But
Fire
we're
away.
first we're just going to start off with, why do you think mushrooms are gaining such attention in canine wellness? We talked a little bit before going live that dogs aren't out there in the wild eating mushrooms, but why is it that we should include it in their wellness repertoire, if you will?
Good place to start. And I could throw that back to you and say, where's the relevance for herbs and plants in an animal diet? I don't think the evolutionarily ancient wolf was digging up valerian roots and
Exactly.
chewing them to get a good night's sleep. So from the point of view of mushrooms, animals and mushrooms share a common ancestor that goes back about 1 billion years. So plants are even older. So our relationship with plants is more tenuous. So that relatively, well, it's not recent, but 1 billion years means that a lot of the DNA is the same in animals and fungi, and there's many intracellular processes that are similar. So fungi have got ergosterol in their cell walls, cell membranes, I mean, and humans and animals have got cholesterol in their cell membranes, and they play, a very, very similar role. The way that cells from animals deal with oxidative stress is very similar to the way that fungi deal with oxidative stress. So when we eat a mushroom, we get the benefits of that very close similarity, and they play off each other. So in terms of the relevance, I'm going to be talking about this at the Feed Real Summit as well. So because of that ancient ancestor, about 400 million years ago, fungi and animals were, their own separate things, and fungi, because of what they do, they want to eat other things. So animals needed to be wary of fungi because they were predators. So about 400 million years ago, animals developed the sensory ability to detect a fungus with various immunological receptors. So when an animal comes in contact with those fungal signatures, it sends messages to the immune system to be better at what it needs to do. So be more vigilant, be more capable, have a more balanced immune response, be more capable just generally. So medicinal mushrooms and culinary mushrooms, functional mushrooms we call them today, they're not pathogenic, but they still have those same signatures that demonstrate or create an awareness in the animal immune system that they need to be more prepared. So the medicinal mushrooms, particularly the beta-glucans, but there's a bunch of other things that do this as well. They prime the immune system, just to be better at what it does. So that's kind of the big reason. But then the shared biology, that we talked about. So there's mushrooms have got a thing called ergothioneine in them, and it almost meets the definition of a vitamin. And then the human and animal need for it is very low, but there still is a need, and it's technically called a conditionally essential nutrient. So if you don't get it, then there's other mechanisms that can compensate, but under certain conditions, the presence of it will improve health. And I think from an animal point of view, the ancient wolf wasn't going around eating mushrooms, but they were eating animals that had eaten mushrooms. And that's where they would have got this constituent from. And in humans, ergothioneine plays a very important role in healthy aging. And when humans lack ergothioneine, they don't age as well. So they get more neurocognitive, issues. There's more cardiovascular disease. They don't sleep as well. They don't live as long. They get more cancer. So there's emerging science that places a lot of emphasis on this thing, and there's not a lot of discussion currently about it. Ergo also plays a very important role in early life in terms of early life development of the young. So
Hmm.
a developing human or a developing puppy, their antioxidant defenses aren't the same as adults. So breast milk, whether it's a dog, or a human, is providing high levels of ergothioneine. There's transporters in the breast that pump ergothioneine into the breast milk. So it plays currently
Interesting.
an unrecognized role in early life development. So in terms of the ancient history, of a wolf, I think that ergothioneine probably played a very important role in supporting the developmental phase in early life, because
Uh-huh.
animals in the wild just don't live as long as they do in a modern world. So
Sure.
now we're in a modern world where animals are living longer, they've got more chronic disease. I think that the mushroom providing ergothioneine means that we need to put a focus on the early life development, but also in later life, it will help extend the period of time whereby which the animal is healthy, so
Hmm.
their health span will be increased and they would experience less disease all around. So that's the sciencey bit around
Yeah.
why mushrooms from an evolutionary point of view would play an important role, and the wolf would have got all of that by eating the prey. And the prey animals that were the primary choice for the wolf were depending on the continent that they were on,
Hmm.
were either deer or wild boars, and both of those herbivores eat large amounts of
Hmm.
mushrooms. And that's kind of it hasn't been studied. It's my hypothesis.
Okay.
I think it's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
And then mushrooms also provide secondary metabolites, just like a plant does. So if you're giving your dog ashwagandha or valerian, then it's the secondary metabolites, the chemistry of those plants, that is providing the adaptogenic or the sedative, supporting
Hmm.
property. So mushrooms contain those types of constituents as well, which makes them indistinguishable in a medical setting from a plant. So reishi has got triterpenes, and those triterpenes are kind of well understood in terms of what they do. And in terms of humans, I mean, we do need to do a bit of translating when we
Uh-huh.
start giving these things to animals. But a bunch of mushrooms have got those secondary metabolites, which makes them pretty much the same in terms of what we're doing for their health as it is
Hmm.
for a plant. But plants don't provide the beta-glucans or the ergothioneine. That's specifically fungal.
To mushroom. Is that do all mushrooms have both beta glucans and the ergothioneine, or is it
They
specific
do.
ones?
And
All of them. Okay.
But when I say beta glucans, it sounds like it's one thing, but it's a very, very complex area of chemistry where there's huge variation within a mushroom, and
Hmm.
then between species, there's huge variations. And I mentioned the immunological stuff, and
Right.
there's a couple of receptors that in a scientific setting that get the strong focus. But because this area is not well studied, um, there's possibly a dozen different receptors that can receive these signals where we
Hmm.
haven't really looked. So a mushroom like tremella, which has got a focus on skin, will be tickling a different set of receptors to reishi or turkey tail, which have
Hmm.
got very different beta glucan configurations. And then beyond that, what goes on in the large intestine is really vital in terms of the animal's health. It's the same with the human.
Hmm.
So the organisms that live in the gut are the microbiota, and then the genetic capacity of those organisms to transform the substances that they interact with as a result of the diet. That's
Hmm.
the microbiome. So all of the genetic capacity that those bacteria have.
Hmm.
And the the evidence is emerging that mushrooms and their beta glucans, plus their non-starch alpha glucans, the chitin beta glucan complexes, the polysaccharide protein complexes. There's a lot of technical
Uh-huh.
detail in this kind of category of beta glucan and polysaccharide. It turns out that they're kind of like precision prebiotics. and they target particular classes and types of bacteria in the gut. So when you
Oh,
give
okay.
lion's mane, it's the insoluble and the soluble fibers that arrive at the large intestine that encourage very particular bacteria to increase in number, and
Mm-hmm.
other bacteria which would be unhelpful or disease
Mm-hmm.
causing would be reduced in their number. And that's an enormous player in the way that mushrooms exert their influence.
Hmm.
And this is why we need to understand the quality of the products that we use, and we need to
Right.
understand the different formats of dosing that we deliver, because they can retain or exclude various bits and pieces of the active part of the plant. So, a whole mushroom is delivering all of the insoluble fibers, which can tend to be regarded as inert.
Mm-hmm.
But this new understanding of the selective or precision prebiotic nature of mushrooms is a really interesting and fascinating area. There's a study with I've forgotten what breed it is now. Maybe it's a dachshund, where they were given reasonably high doses of lion's mane,
Mm-hmm.
and that was all they were given. And when you're dealing with technically kind of dysbiosis, it's quite a
Mm-hmm.
complicated program that you put an animal through, of weeding and feeding and all that sort of stuff. But just lion's mane alone was enough to reverse the dysbiosis.
Oh, wow. That's really
So,
interesting.
yeah.
And with lion's mane, I always think of nerve health and brain health.
Yes.
How do it's just so strange to me that mushrooms have such a different impact, and I guess it's all to do with the receptors that they connect with in the body. And
Well, lion's mane's a good illustration of this point. So,
okay.
in the modern world, we tend to think even when we're holistic, we still fall into the trap of thinking reductionistically.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to take a step back and look at it through a wide angle to fully appreciate, what a mushroom like lion's mane is doing. So to
Mm-hmm.
start with, lion's mane has no traditional use as a cognitive mushroom.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, well, how come? People are surprised to hear that. In Japan, there was folklore around monks eating lion's mane in their monasteries and observing, like improvements in their cognition, and that piqued the interest of scientists. And then they did some work, and they found this interest in chemistry, and then the legend of the cognitive stuff was born. But in
Ah.
China, where the longest traditional use, it was a gastrointestinal mushroom, and it was used for convalescence from disease and old age, and it was used in cases of debility. So there are aspects of cognitive function in that traditional Chinese use, but it wasn't, the cognitive thing wasn't the forward
Okay.
facing kind of
Uh-huh.
application. So let's unpack that a little bit. So we
Mm-hmm.
now know that the gut brain axis is really important, and it's not just the
Yeah.
gut brain axis, it's the gut, the microbiota brain
Right.
axis. So lion's mane significantly helps all sorts of gastrointestinal conditions. And by regulating the microbiota, we're getting an improvement in that, and then that enhances the gut brain axis. So the simplest way to think about fibers in the gut is that when they get metabolized by bacteria, they produce things called short chain fatty acids. So there's butyrate and there's propionate acetate. The insoluble fibers that arrive at the distal end of the large intestine, at the end of the large intestine, that's where the butyrate kind of manufacturing is at its highest. So
Okay.
if you've only got soluble beta-glucans, they get turned into acetates and propionates at the front of the large intestine. It's the insoluble ones at the end. So
Mm-hmm.
when butyrates get produced, they go into circulation, and they're short chain fatty acid receptors in the brain. And in animal studies with mice and rats, you can demonstrate improvements in cognitive function just because of the increase in those short chain fatty
Hmm.
acids. I
Interesting.
think the picture is more complex than that. And there's a whole lot of metabolites that bacteria produce that we
Mm-hmm.
don't currently fully understand. Small molecules which can get into circulation, which can have these effects. So lion's mane is exerting significant influence over brain function because it's got soluble and insoluble polysaccharides, beta-glucans, that get fermented in the large intestine. And then lion's mane is very high in ergothioneine. And ergothioneine, of all of the chemical elements within a mushroom, has got the highest correlation with improving cognitive function. It's too complex to talk about how it does it, but it essentially gets into cells and it improves the way that all of the proteins work within our cells. If you could zoom in and look inside a cell, it's a very complex molecular machine, and the machinery is all proteins and they all interact with each other. And the conformational shape of those proteins is crucial. And proteins have all got the ones that do most of the work have got an inbuilt weakness when they have a cysteine amino acid residue in them. Those amino acids are the ones that get damaged by oxidative stress. So when there's oxidative stress, the cysteine in the amino acid gets damaged and then the protein can't function optimally. So ergothioneine plays a role by engaging in cellular processes which protect that cysteine residue via a process called persulfidation, which is a little bit technical, but basically there's a molecule is added to that cysteine amino acid which protects that protein so it can do its job better. And when that happens in the brain, it improves the mechanisms which control neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. There's very good ways of understanding how that works. And lion's mane's quite high in that particular molecule. And then finally, which is where the reductionistic thinking starts, is that lion's mane has got this secondary metabolite chemistry. So the fruiting bodies have got hericinones, pure mycelium produces erinacine A, and both of those chemical classes have got profound influence over how the nervous system functions. And when you take the hericinones from the fruiting body, it increases peripheral nerve growth factor, which can help the nervous system, and in ways that we don't fully understand, it can get into the brain and influence brain function. So lion's mane is this multifaceted, incredibly complex mushroom, which is very, very poorly understood. And the way that lion's mane is manufactured by real mushrooms, it contains all of those elements that I just talked about. And the one-in-one nature of the extract, which means that the mushroom is dried and boiled and then dehydrated, nothing is lost or wasted. So it retains all of the insoluble fibers. The insoluble fibers play a really crucial role in the distal end of the large intestine in controlling dysbiosis and improving the gut-brain axis. And in that dysbiosis study on dogs, it was the whole mushroom that was used. When you have an extract where you discard the insoluble fibers, you get value out of it, but you don't get the full picture.
But you're saying the real mushroom product retains that.
Yeah, it's got the ergothioneine, it's got the hericinones, it's got the soluble beta-glucans, and it's got all of the insoluble stuff as well. And the insoluble stuff is a fermenter fuel for the large intestine.
Well, and that plays into a good question when you are looking at mushroom supplements, which there are numerous ones on the market now. Those are things that you need to be aware of, like how they are processed, what part of the mushroom they're using.
How strong it is, so how much of a dose you need to use. These are all important. And there's lots of great brands out there. And part of my job is educating people to just ask the right questions. So they're not being they're more resistant to the marketing tricks that companies would use.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we talked a lot about how the mushrooms are maintaining that healthy gut microbiome and how impactful that is. What is the easiest and most effective way for dog parents to start using mushrooms in their dogs? It's a totally new idea to them. How would you recommend they start?
The simplest way to start is just with a supplement. So Real Mushrooms has got a range of pet focused products. So
Hmm.
I think just getting started in an area where there's perhaps a concern or there's an interest. So it might be a young dog, and this is where I would start. Young
Hmm.
dog, let's prevent the diseases from happening. Let's not wait till they start. Um,
Yes.
and then in a situation like that, having a cocktail of different mushrooms
Hmm.
would make a lot of sense, because one mushroom like reishi is good at particular things, but when
Hmm.
you combine it with turkey tail or chaga, for example, shiitake, you get these additive benefits. So a range of mushrooms makes the most sense. But if you're coming to this and you've got a dog that's getting some age and you're worried about their cognitive function, then lion's mane might be a good place to start.
Okay. Good. Um, so with the mushrooms, when you have, I know there's like what the Five Defenders product where you have
Yeah, so that
five
that would be a
really,
good place to
yeah,
start with
you
that
have
with that
those
blend.
five. So they work synergistically together. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
and there's a number of different ways to explain that, but each mushroom has got its own kind of characteristics and nature, and it's good at particular things.
Hmm.
So combining them together means that you get the best of the both worlds. And
Okay.
that particular product is a combination of the soluble and insoluble constituents from the mushrooms, plus all of the secondary metabolite chemistry. So
Nice.
reishi is possibly the most important of all of the mushrooms,
Okay.
and it's possibly the most plant-like because it's got secondary metabolites, which the triterpenes, which taste bitter,
Okay.
which have got these profound benefits in the body. They get into the bloodstream. They look after the cardiovascular system. They look
Mm.
after the heart, and they help with the immune system as well. And they've got this reputation of being adaptogenic, so um, they help the cellular stress response in animals.
So that's why people have called them the mushroom of immortality.
Yeah, well, back Reishi's been used for at least 2,000 years in written history. It's talked about being used for 4,000 years, like in the traditional sense, and it
Hmm.
possibly goes back even further than that.
Sure.
The first human use of a mushroom, based on the archaeological evidence that I've been reading, is 48,000 years. So our interaction with mushrooms goes back a long time.
Hmm.
So reishi is a fascinating one because it's got that long history. But if you compared it with shiitake, which is the kind of the signature edible medicinal
Hmm.
mushroom, Chinese people worked out how to cultivate that 1,100 years ago. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And they did that in China. That mushroom didn't arrive in the US until the 1980s. So,
Oh, wow.
you know, they've got 1,000 years head start on us in terms of understanding,
Cultivating.
how to grow
Uh-huh.
these things and the relevance of them. And there's all that ancestral knowledge and ancestral wisdom.
Sure.
So people hear China and kind of throw their hands up in the air, but China's a vast country with enormous tracts of pristine wilderness, and
Exactly.
the Real Mushrooms gets their shiitake from the same kind of forested areas where the original people worked out how to cultivate it. So the consistency with that tradition is profound.
Hmm.
So when you got reishi, in Japan, they worked out how to cultivate it only in 1970. So our
Oh.
use of that mushroom is relatively recent from a cultivated sense.
Hmm.
Prior to that, it was all wildcrafted, and there aren't very many reishi mushrooms when you walk into a forest.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of kept the lid on this mushroom of immortality. And then the original techniques were to grow reishi on logs buried in the ground. That takes
Hmm.
9 to 12 months. That's how
Ah.
real mushrooms. That's how Real Mushrooms does it.
Uh-huh.
But very quickly, it was worked out that sawdust from a wood mill, which is a very difficult waste product for a logging company or
Right.
a milling company to get rid of. What if we use that to grow the reishi mushrooms? Then the mushrooms that grow from the sawdust only take 3 to 4 months, and but the quality of the triterpenes is quite different. So, and then people grow reishi on brown rice, and then reishi grown on brown rice has no triterpenes because the reishi needs the wood to get access to that chemistry to turn it into the triterpenes. So much of what gets used in the Western world is not the authentic reishi grown on logs, and I think that has is diluting the traditional kind of understanding around the mushroom of immortality thing. So when you get reishi from a log-grown wood source, it's got these miraculous properties of supporting the immune system and managing the cardiovascular system. And the modern understanding of aging, at least in humans, I don't know how this exactly translates into dogs, but clearly the cardiovascular system is important. And in humans, the aorta, that first bit of the artery that comes out of the heart, it has the highest correlation with healthy aging of all of the tissues in the body. And the healthier that the aorta is, the less senolytic proteins it produces. So the aorta produces these molecules which signal the rest of the body to accelerate their aging. So when your aorta is unhealthy, it sends signals to the rest of the body to speed up their aging process.
Oh, wow.
When the aorta is more healthy, it calms that process down. So it's fascinating research. And reishi has got an enormous capacity to look after the linings of the vascular system. And I think that it's quite underrated as a cardiovascular mushroom. And it does that because those triterpenes, when they're in their correct format from a log-grown source, they get taken up by the linings of the blood vessels. And when they get taken up, they then exert an influence over the machinery in those cells to improve the health of them.
Nice.
And then this is a bit more difficult a topic to talk about, and we don't fully understand the repertoire of bitter receptors in dogs, but in humans, we've got 25 bitter receptors, and we don't just taste them on our tongue or in our mouth. Those bitter receptors are expressed everywhere in our body. And in a human, 23 of those bitter receptors are expressed in the cardiovascular system, and about 11 or 12 of them are very highly expressed in heart and arterial tissue. So when we take a mushroom that's bitter, like reishi, it interacts with those bitter receptors. And in the left ventricle of the heart, particular bitter receptors are incredibly highly expressed, and no one knows what they do. So I think that the traditional knowledge around reishi being a cardiovascular mushroom and being this mushroom of longevity very closely ties in with the quality of the triterpenes and what they're doing at that cardiovascular level. So when we take reishi, bitter reishi is best. It's got to be like whack you in the face bitter. That's why a pill for an animal is a better idea, because they don't like eating things that are too bitter. And then we've got to relax into this idea that we don't know everything about the natural world, and we need to rely on our traditional knowledge that hasn't yet been fully explored scientifically. So if we line everything up, so if we take a bit of traditional knowledge, like reishi, being the mushroom of immortality, we need to make sure that we do it exactly the same way that those ancients did it.
Right.
Or we need a jolly good reason to say, no, we're going to do it differently because we've got scientific research to back it up. So sticking with the traditional way to do it, log-grown reishi, very high focus on the bitterness, then we can be confident that we'll get all of these benefits. And reishi was a panacea. And in the herbal realm, in traditional Chinese medicine, other panacea type herbs are Korean ginseng, perhaps, or Rhamania, astragalus, astragalus, I should say, in the American pronunciation. So reishi covers an enormous breadth of the health spectrum. It does more than just about any other herb, definitely more than any other mushroom does. And I think those benefits, you can trace them back to various aspects of the chemistry. So
Uh-huh.
for me, I think that reishi is a number one thing as a regular additive in a dog's
Okay.
diet. My dog, because I came to this so late, I've got a geriatric cavoodle who's nearly 14 years old.
Wow.
And he's been doing reishi, turkey tail, shiitake, maitake, lion's mane every day for not as long as you would expect for someone like me, maybe 2 years,
Uh-huh.
maybe 2.5 years. And his health has improved significantly. He's got a lot of warts on his body. They've
Uh-huh.
reduced in size dramatically
Interesting.
just with that. His cognitive function has improved.
Uh-huh.
He's got playful behaviors that had been kind of, packed away. He does
Mm-hmm.
Zoom now, and he had kind of stopped doing that. And I think, reishi is a significant contributor, to that general kind of health picture.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, and who doesn't want to keep those dogs around longer and
Yeah, exactly.
healthier, Um, what was I going to say? So are there mushrooms that dog parents should avoid or common misconceptions about giving mushrooms to dogs?
No, there aren't any that should be avoided.
Okay.
And I don't want to create any fear.
Yeah.
Of all mushrooms, maybe 1% of them are poisonous, and definitely you can't eat those ones.
Right.
So don't let your dogs forage in the wild for mushrooms.
Yeah.
Don't let them eat the mushrooms, the white ones that grow up in the backyard, because dogs don't want to do that. In terms of the ones that are available as supplements, they're all healthy, and we don't need to be cautious,
Okay.
about them in the
Mhm.
same way that we might with particular plants that are available, where plants have got chemistry that in some cases we need to be cautious of.
Sure.
Um,
Are there any interactions with prescription drugs that your dog might be on? Would you have to be cautious with that?
the That's a good question. I don't have the perfect
Okay.
answer, but the herb drug interactions are much more significant than the
Yeah.
mushroom drug interaction. So, with reishi, for example, in quite high doses, if people have got blood thinning issues,
Mhm.
then there's a contraindication around reishi and anticoagulants.
Okay.
But I think that's that's not something that we need to be worried about. And anywhere where there's an issue, there's going to be a label statement on the product,
Okay.
advising caution.
Yeah. Yeah, it
So I
just
don't
came to
I don't
me.
think there's problems that people need to be in front of mind. But in humans, if you eat raw shiitake has got very fascinating chemistry. It's very, very underrated as a mushroom. And in
Okay.
my scheme of things, reishi and shiitake are number one and two in terms of medicinal benefits.
Mhm.
And so if you could eat shiitake regularly, that's kind of like the best choice. But in humans, if they eat shiitake raw, there's a chance that it will cause a type of dermatitis rash, which
Hmm.
is incredibly itchy and painful and uncomfortable. And the research suggests it comes from one of the beta-glucans, but I don't agree with the research
Hmm.
because when you heat the mushroom, it reduces that tendency quite significantly. And if you cook
Mhm.
it for 10 or 15 minutes, then people don't seem to get that reaction. And
Interesting.
shiitake is kind of like the garlic of the fungal world. It's got a molecule in it called ergothioneine, which has got a very high levels of sulfur. It's a ring-like structure
Ah, okay.
with 5 sulfur atoms in it.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know that happens with dogs if you feed them raw shiitake, but I would be cautious. And in humans, it happens to about 4% of the population, and it's very uncomfortable. And the
Hmm.
solution is
Interesting.
simply just to cook the mushroom.
Yeah, that's the one that I can get at our local grocery stores that are organic shiitake mushrooms. And so those are ones that I always have to cook with. I don't eat them raw. I
Yeah,
always
and if you
saute
cook them,
them. And
then you can feed them to your dog.
yeah.
And if you cook them in something meaty, they get wolfed down, no
Now
time.
mine will leave little pieces. She's a She's so difficult. I have to give her the powders. Otherwise, if I give her little pieces of mine, they'll be stuck in the corner of her tray. Same with garlic. I mean, I don't know how she gets those tiny pieces out, but
But yeah,
she'll
shiitake is
wolf
a
down
very
everything.
underrated medicinal mushroom and a
Yeah,
food at the same time.
yeah, it adds such flavor too. So I love that I am able to find those a lot. Once in a while, I can find maitakes too, but it's usually just the shiitakes and then just some other varieties of mushrooms. But those are the ones that I look for. And so I think I missed one up here. Inflammation is the root of so many of our chronic conditions in both humans and dogs. How do mushrooms play a role in that?
They play a vital role. So
Yeah.
it's not just inflammation, but it's oxidative stress. So if we
Mm-hmm.
can't manage oxidative stress, it becomes inflammatory. And
Okay.
if we have stealth pathogens or, subacute, conditions and chronic things going on, then that can lead to inflammation as well. And then when they're unchecked, the corollary of that is, cancer development. So
Mm-hmm.
having a control on oxidative stress and inflammation is really super duper important. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the secret weapon in a mushroom is ergothioneine,
Okay.
which plays a role, prevents the worst excesses of inflammation,
Mm-hmm.
and it prevents the worst in excesses of oxidative stress. And interestingly, when we have inflammation, the various bits of our DNA get unwound to express the antioxidant response elements and inflammatory gene networks that become the blueprint for the production of the inflammatory mediators, so nuclear factor kappa B and interleukin 6 and all those sorts of things.
Uh-huh.
So when our bodies are like, oh shit, we better start doing the inflammatory thing. Right next door to those genes is the genes for the production of the ergothioneine transporter proteins.
Okay.
So when tissues and cells are inflamed, they increase the expression of ergothioneine transporters to bring more of that molecule into the cell to help calm that inflammation down
Oh,
and to
okay.
help control the cellular environment to get it back into like a redox kind of balance. Bit of excitement going on in the house.
Yes, when the other dog is here, she's a barker. Mine doesn't normally bark, but that's why I wear headphones. But
Yeah.
something's going on. Not sure what.
So it's the ergothioneine, which predominantly comes from golden oyster mushrooms. That's the highest easily available source. Porcini in the
Okay.
wild has got naturally the highest levels. So that's a very key player in controlling and managing those oxidative and inflammatory processes.
Uh-huh.
But we also have the beta-glucans in mushrooms that also play an anti-inflammatory role as well. And then we have the individual constituents of mushrooms. So the triterpenes in reishi play an anti-inflammatory role.
Okay.
So I'm very big on prevention.
Sure.
I'm very big on educating people to look after themselves, look after their pets, to prevent the development of any of these age-related, or accidental or infective kind of origins of these things. So having mushrooms, and I think they should be a part of the standard diet. And from a human point of view, because of our heritage as a Western country, we've inherited this Anglo mycophobia, which is why it's taken so long for us to get on board with mushrooms.
Yeah.
But cultures, other than ours, have always eaten mushrooms as part of their regular diet. It's not just a thing that you might put on a pizza every now and then. So having them as a regular part of our diet helps to control all of this stuff to do the disease prevention bit. But often, it's not an ideal world. So it's like, oh, shoot, we've got this inflammatory thing going on.
Yes.
Let's help manage it. And mushrooms play a really important role in that area as well.
That's great.
My experience, with the warts, let's use that as the example with my dog. There was a wart on his shoulder that was huge, and now you can hardly see it. Like 2 years later.
Uh-huh.
So having the subtle, slow, everyday influence of mushrooms and what they do to the immune system allows the body to deal with the stealthy viruses, the stealthy bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So they get into cells and they actively tell those cells to not signal to the immune system that they're infected.
Mm-hmm.
The cell would naturally want to say, hey, guys, like I'm infected with this awful virus. Come and kill me. Get rid
Mm-hmm.
of me before I can ruin it for the whole animal. Those mechanisms get switched off, and the natural world has got the ability to undo those mechanisms and make those cells visible to the immune system so they can be got rid of. And I
Nice.
think mushrooms play an important role in that process. We don't understand a lot about how that works,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the same as how it works in humans, and I see that regularly
Yeah.
in human populations as well. So
Well, and
mushrooms, I think, are vital in that category.
yeah. I think that one of the key things that you just said is, your dog, you've been doing this for 2 years and now you're seeing, the reduction over time. And that's something that people need to remember, that you're not going to take them for 2 days and you're going to see major changes. It's giving your body a constant supply. Is that correct?
Totally correct. Yeah. And I think the pharmaceutical industry, has brainwashed people into
Yeah,
thinking that there's quick fixes for these things. And, if my dog gets run over by a car, I'm going to take it straight to the hospital, like
sure.
I'll give it herbs as well. But so I'm not anti conventional medicine. What
Right.
I am anti is the like indiscriminate and unthoughtful, use of it in situations, where it's not kind of needed. So when we're using any natural product, it takes time.
Right.
And, humans are the same. Dogs are the same in terms of exercise. You'd be foolish to think that you could, if you've got a busy lifestyle, you'll just exercise your dog once a month,
Yeah.
and you'll do it all day, and you'll catch up on all of that exercise that you missed out on. It doesn't work, does it?
No,
You can't give a good diet just for 1 week out of the year. It's got to be a good diet all year. So
exactly.
these lifestyle things only work when you do them as a lifestyle thing. And we have to change the mindset around mushrooms as being a lifestyle thing, because the modern animal isn't living in an ancient world. And there's all
Yes.
sorts of stresses and strains. There's all the psychosocial stress, not living its natural life. There's
Right.
all of the chemical stress, all of the chemicals that they come in contact with. They need support across the course of their life.
Mhm.
And mushrooms are now an important part of achieving that. And
Yeah.
also replacing what's lost from an ancient nutritional point of view, where ergothioneine was part of the diet because wolves ate, their prey animals.
Sure.
So, making sure that there's some of that in the diet, plays a role as well.
Yeah, I like that. Well, because you're a speaker at the Feed Real Summit, I've been asked to do 5 rapid fire questions. So we're
Okay,
going to get started on that.
I'll try and speed my answers up.
What is the red flag you look for on a pet supplement label?
Oh golly, it would have been good to have been primed
I thought they gave these
beforehand.
to you.
That's actually a tough question. It's easier to know what to look for.
Okay.
Like in a mushroom, I would always look for verified levels of beta-glucans.
Okay.
That's kind of like the signature thing. And if it's reishi, the levels of triterpenes would be ideal as well.
So you should also be able to get like a certificate of analysis or
Yeah, you,
just
you should be able to ask the company for a
yeah,
certificate of analysis.
yeah,
That's important, but that's not the only kind of determinant of quality. Understanding the company's ethos
yeah.
is an important step,
I
because
agree.
some of the things I've been describing, they're not easily represented on a piece of paper.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. What do dog parents misunderstand about herbs overall?
What do dog parents misunderstand about herbs? I think that in a modern setting, and I would because mushrooms were only got taken out of the plant kingdom in the 1960s, when I hear the word herb, it kind of embraces mushrooms as well,
Yeah.
is that they're interventions only. They need to be considered as a primary part of the lifespan of the animal. And they might have different herbs and different mushrooms across that lifespan, but in a modern world, I think they're an essential element to long-term health, particularly enhancing life, not lifespan, but health span.
Yeah.
It's not
I
about
agree.
living longer as much as not having any disease. And
Right.
you know, the
Living
animal
better.
goes to bed one night and doesn't wake up the next day. That's ideal.
Yeah. What's the biggest lie the pet supplement industry tells us?
These are hard questions, Kay.
I didn't make them. They came to me.
So what's the biggest lie that the pet say that again?
Industry that the pet industry tells the dog parents.
Oh, I think one of them is that, like cooked food is the way to go. I think that's possibly the biggest fabrication, and that we need a more evolutionarily relevant diet. Hence,
Yeah.
the whole rationale for feed reel.
Well, and I think the other thing, but first thing that comes to my mind is that it's gonna, 2 to 3 days from now, you'll see a difference, because we just talked about how these products take time. Any natural product is going to take time. And you're going to
And
see.
if you see a result in 2 to 3 days, then it's a powerful pharmaceutical, which, does a very particular thing. And
Right.
that always comes with, unwanted side effects. So,
Yeah.
many of the medications that get used might be great short term,
Right.
and help you get out of a problem. And then the idea would be to stop it. But we get onto medications, and then they create the need for more medications. And then
Yes.
it's kind of like this snowballing effect.
Yes.
It's great for the company that sells all the drugs,
Of
but it's not great.
course.
It's not great for the animal or the
No.
human, for that
Or the
matter.
humans. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this one. What do you wish dog parents would stop buying right now? I know my answer.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think, pre-made cooked food is the thing that comes to
That
my
ultra
mind the most,
processed. Yeah.
particularly the ultra processed
Yeah.
dry food, which is just the lazy way of looking after your dog.
Yeah. I think it's, we're seeing more and more people realizing that. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And then
And
what
the
shift? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, humans the same, it's the ultra processed food. And
Exactly.
I listened to a podcast recently where this podcast organization reviews all of the recent publications in the science area of health and longevity. And a paper was published that compared the difference between an ultra processed food diet and a healthy diet in humans.
Uh-huh.
And they were matched per calorie.
Uh-huh.
It was only 3 weeks, so it's not kind of long enough. But what they discovered was that the ultra processed diet did, create some health issues that were measurable, and when they went in and actually had a look at it, it wasn't actually the calories in the diet.
Right.
The ultra processed food, in this case, had very high levels of a phthalate that had a particular name that comes from the cookware that's used to make those ultra processed foods. So in this particular study, which isn't reflective of this whole topic that we're talking about, there's a phthalate, which is a known toxin, which is initially, starting the events. But cooked foods, particularly grains, in animal kibbles, are incredibly high in advanced glycation end products, which are incredibly damaging, to the linings of the blood vessels initially, and then, to other tissues as well. So it's kind of like a toxic soup of unhealthy potential, right there in a cup of dried food.
Yeah. So the final one is, what shift do you see happening in human health that will show up first in dog health?
I'm on a mission to make ergothioneine front of mind in the human population,
Okay.
and I think that message will eventually filter into the animal domain as well. I
Uh-huh.
think the animal need for ergothioneine is very small. We're talking, maybe a milligram a day,
Wow.
but a milligram a day keeps the doctor away.
I love that. Um, so we do have a code. Use FeedReal10 for 10% off of real mushrooms. If you want to go to that website today and get your order started. With all these products that we talked about, both human and pet products are on the website, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, if you guys don't have your tickets to the Feed Real Summit, you should grab them now. They are going fast. We are a month out. And Lee will be one of our prominent speakers. I think you're speaking on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm speaking on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just after lunch.
Okay. We have 2 full days of speakers. We have 3 workshops to choose from. Just a great group of people that are going to be there. Hope to see you there. Go to feedreal.com/summit to get your tickets now. And I think we've covered everything, Lee. Thank you for being
My pleasure,
player
Claire.
with this. It was so much fun to talk to you. I'm so excited to see you again and talk more
Yeah,
at
Feed
the
Reel is going to
summit.
be fantastic. Yeah, and for
It's
those that might be on the fence about coming, I will, beyond all of the fantastic education that you're going to get,
yeah,
speakers are available, on the floor behind their booths, wandering around. So you get the chance to ask us questions directly,
exactly.
which in some cases, there's often a burning question that someone's got, but you get the right answer, it can be life changing. So it's a
Absolutely. And they'll
fantastic,
be,
fun event to attend. I look
yeah,
forward to seeing you there.
so excited. So, well, thanks again, and we will see you next month.
Thanks, Kay.
Bye-bye,
Bye,
everyone. Thanks
everyone.
for showing up.